Hey folks, totally not named Dan here, though you can call me that if you want. And we're back again with my buddy, Yuna the Sheep, to go over some bands in Errata, specifically for the month of April.
Thanks for having me here. It's always good to keep updated on these things.
Yeah, and it's very nice that this year, the 1st of April was a Monday, so this news came out on a Tuesday. Next year might be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, if they release an April Fool's list, then the real list or something.
We did get an April Fool's Day announcement this year. The Fresh Cut Grass promo character, who is going to be a real problem because now they actually have to define in the rules what qualifies as a compliment.
Yeah, it's going to be weird judge calls of people trying to angle shoot that one.
Yeah, I mean, if they just put it in the effect, they could hand wave it. But the fact they put it in the cost of the ability means people can't activate the ability unless they can do a compliment. And so they've got to define what a compliment is.
Yeah, it's going to be funny and weird.
Yeah. I'm still looking forward to pulling the shadow meme on people.
Yeah.
But let's get into what we're actually here to talk to about today. The ban and errata update for April, which includes one card for the bans, and that is snack time. Snack time has been a problem for a very long time. Way more than most people are prepared to accept.
It's always been a good card for its symbols. It's like almost an auto-inclusive at least. 2 copies, normally 4 unless you're really, really tight on space.
So there is no reason not to include 4 if you're going for the sort of strategy that it goes for, which most decks on those symbols do. I don't know how many people play it on all. I've definitely seen it in basically every Death or Earth deck. But what this is...
in a couple all lists, like Tiger and Magna, but Magna needs all the help she can get.
What this is better one with nature. It has always been better one with nature. Now, it does have a downside compared to one with nature, and that downside is that stun and plus speed are more interactable than plus block modifier. And we did talk about how part of the actual problem with one with nature wasn't what it gave, but how uninteractable it was.
Yeah,
However,
I agree.
+1 speed and stun 1 is essentially +2 speed, with one of that speed carrying over until the next time your opponent actually blocks, which is better than just +2 speed.
Yeah. It's why there's so many stun hate cards, just because of how annoying it is.
There are very few actual stun hate cards. There is a lot of stun resistance. Keeping Eri safe, the 0 diff that just readies itself once per turn when stunned, is one of the most popular cards in the format, and that does literally nothing. All it does is resist stun 1 time.
It's why I always feel weird including it, but it's like, you gotta have Summit for stun, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, in the meta it's good, but only because stun is so prevalent, because people so favor stun as a way to turn off defense. I genuinely don't think keeping Eri safe is a good card in its own right.
I gotta agree with that as well. It always feels like the worst zero for me to include, because it's like a do nothing, which does better just blank on some symbols.
Yeah, and it's not stun hate. That doesn't punish the person for playing stun, that just tells them play stun more. Because most cards that stop stun just stop it a little bit. They don't actually punish it.
The only one I can think of off the top of my head is Shocking Surprise, which is either you keep the stun thing, then you commit one of theirs already one of yours.
That is not the name of the card. I'll
Yeah.
put it up on screen and people will see what the card name actually is. But yeah, I run that specifically in my Genkai deck, and it came up. Somebody played a block at my last event where blocking the card caused me to commit one. I went, okay, this one can't be committed. I'll commit another one though. And then I'll flip this. In flipping this, I'm allowed to ready one. I'll ready my Demon Plants. My Demon Plants has been readied before, but this doesn't say that hasn't been readied this turn. And then I'll commit my Demon Plants, get a 3rd use out of it this turn. So actually, my opponent made my life better, not worse, by stunning me.
I've seen it a little bit in my Giro 2 list, where I'll stun Summit down, but then I'll just pick up a better card, which makes it a lot better than a lot of the stun resist cards.
Yeah, that card actually does do some stuff to the player that's stunning. Or it makes things better for you, the player who's being stunned. But, I mean, you got that, you got Gas Cloud. Maybe at a push it can't be fixed. And that's all the stun hate I can think of.
And that's MHA only now, it can't be fixed.
Yeah, because that's rotated out of standard now. But we'll talk about rotation in a second. The important point here is that snack time There's not a lot that actually punishes you for that stun. There's a lot that interacts with the stun that resists it a bit, but as the player using that stun, it doesn't really hurt to just use that stun more.
Yeah, especially because those symbols do have a lot of draw on them.
Yeah. So the other thing that makes this way better than One with Nature is the fact that it's 1, not 2 with Nature. That 1 difficulty on this card is really, really free. You don't have to play this as one of your high-cost foundations that's going to actually define your strategy. You can just throw this in and just spam copies of this down and have maybe even 3 of these out on the field. You're not going to use all 3 if you do, so it's not optimal. But, I mean, hitting 2 of them is never bad.
Just there's a lot of one diff that are kind of So having one that is as good as Snack Time was easy include in deck building.
Yeah. This card hasn't been a major problem for a while. The time it was a major problem was because this has Earth, which One with Nature also shares. And having both of them in your deck was just insane, because 8 copies of One with Nature meant you would never not see it.
Yeah, but over time, it's been an annoying card for sure. Like you're like, Snack Time, gotta watch out for it.
Yeah. So here we go. In the aftermath of our first standard rotation and the release of the Dark Tournament, while we're still working from a smaller sample size of high attendance events, there have been a few noticeable patterns emerging. Most significant of these is the success of the death symbol. So this is interesting. They don't care about Earth. Earth has been the throw a few big attacks aggro symbol for the longest time. But that's apparently not what they're looking at here. They're looking at death. While we have our eye on some of the death characters who are specifically putting up the most success on the symbol, we see younger Toguro, aka Taguro Toguro, and Shigaraki 3. Interesting to hear that Shigaraki 3 is doing stuff, because I've not seen much of that.
Yeah, I've not played much Dark Tournament stuff, but yeah, I saw him maybe once or twice beforehand, but that was the same player I just happened to be facing.
Let's see what he does. Enhance, your rival makes a check against a difficulty of 5. If they fail, you draw a card. So you get to draw a card, not even every attack at all. Once per turn, he gets even -1, so they have to commit something to pass. That's not huge. But he does once per game, give the rivals checks all -1 till the start of the next turn. Okay, so he can do a little bit to force that through. But I mean, even if he draws an attack or has stun 1 the opponent's choice on every single attack, that's all he's doing. I don't understand how he's functional.
There's a couple of his foundations that do stuff with making you check more.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of attacks that do, but just run them in anyone else. I've seen Vile Seizing in so many decks, but never a Shigaraki deck.
Yeah, true.
But let's see. According to UVS Games, the success of the symbol has been incredibly broad, and Death as a whole has separated itself from the pack win rate-wise, especially in bigger events. So I will admit I do have a deck coming up that's based on Death that won a lot more easily than I thought it would. So it is a good symbol, but I'm still not entirely convinced that this isn't just over-representation of players, rather than the symbol actually being overwhelmingly good.
Yeah, I could see that.
Back when One with Nature was originally added to the ban list, okay, so we are getting to that. The team had an in-depth conversation about also banning snack time. Good, as they should have. We had an in-depth conversation about banning snack time at the time. I will link that in the description. Snack time provides a similar value as One with Nature, while sporting a significant deadlock ability and an even lower difficulty. Yeah, the deadlock ability of just flip a foundation, draw a card on every attack it's not the end of the world, but it's definitely nothing to be sneezed at.
Yeah, if you know you can kill that turn, you just flip all the stuff you've already used just to draw extra cards for this +1 speed and stun 1.
And if you're drawing that many extra cards, you're probably going to win that turn. Plus, as you point out, those cards pay the discard 1 card cost, so essentially you're losing nothing. That's kind of crazy. We chose not to ban it at the time because the symbols on Snack Time were mostly in the middle of the pack performance-wise, and it was a key tool for the game plans that did have success. But the card stayed very high on our radar. Yeah, so basically, All and Death didn't abuse One with Nature the same way that Earth and Good did. But I mean, if Earth could abuse One with Nature, and was doing so, and Snack Time still has Earth, I think this card probably should have gone.
Yeah, and this is arguably better than One with Nature, what got snipped a long time ago.
Oh, it's better in so many ways that the fact that it's slightly more interactable, I really don't think saves it.
Yeah, I've got to agree.
Rate of return for discarding cards to Snack Time has proven to be too high for this sort of overall package. In the previous metagame, the good symbol was doing similar things to the current death package, drawing lots of cards with the abilities on its attacks, and turning the extra cards into offense. Yeah. Yeah, so Death has basically no way to draw on foundations outside of this card, which is very interesting. I think it might have slightly more now in UU, but certainly in the My Hero cards, there's next to nothing. It is
Yeah.
all on the attacks, which is probably why Shigaraki gets away with basically saying draw 1 on every attack.
Yeah, and it's probably why Vial Season is so expensive if you're playing Death and is a must.
Yeah. And Vile Seizing isn't busted, it's just draw a card. But it turns out just draw a card is really good. Once we banned One with Nature, some players adopted raiding the villain hideout as a 1 or 2 of, but most players just pivoted into playing more offense in their attack lineups. With One with Nature gone, Good's win rates and high level success dropped slightly. Yeah, I mean, it killed a bunch of my decks.
And mine.
We'll talk about that in the next video. And it rejoined the rest of the pack. It was still a successful symbol, but no longer an outlier. This is the outcome we are also hoping for with the death symbol. Yeah, so the thing with that is a lot of cards had to go to make Good not an outlier in how good it was. I don't necessarily think One with Nature was the big one. Losing Capture Evildoers did a lot, for example.
Yeah, it hurt a lot of my decks on Good.
Not having Valiant Assault would have done a lot to Good. Anything that made its card draw a bit more fair so that Snack Time and One with Nature weren't so free would have made it a much fairer symbol, even if it kept One with Nature. But at the same time, I know full well that would not have fully fixed it, because I was running One with Nature in my Ballmite deck, and Ballmite had draw on face, and most of his attacks didn't draw cards. But it wasn't necessary for his attacks to draw cards when One with Nature forced them through to use his character ability, which did draw cards.
Yeah, it was just a good deck with a card that made it even better with One with Nature. It was still okay without it.
No, it's basically unplayable without it because it's so blockable. One with Nature pushed it to the point where it could get that card draw reliably every turn, and that was all it needed to actually be good. So yeah, One with Nature was a problem. A good symbol in general could have lost some other things and been fine with One with Nature, but a few instances of things like Ballmite were massively propped up by that card in ways that perhaps they shouldn't have been. So I think losing One with Nature made sense.
Yeah, because you don't want a card that just makes things go.
However, the fact that they
good.
refer to One with Nature as a problem for Good is still very bizarre to me, because the place where One with Nature was the hugest problem was in Ojiro 2, and Ojiro 2 was specifically an Earth deck. And yeah, Ojiro 2 got hit with a nerf, but the thing is, that nerf did not stop Ojiro 2 being a problem. It just stopped him being popular. He was still practically as good as he had been before. The One with Nature hit was what killed him as a deck in terms of viability, and so it was, as far as I was concerned, a hit to Earth, not a hit to Good. I really think this analysis is completely at odds with what I experienced.
Same here, to be honest.
I do not think the way that UVS games and Jasco, as it was back then, look at this game reflects how the players in the meta actually interact with it. But they just want to bring it back in line with the other symbols. They don't want to massively ruin Death. Death can lose Snack Time. Death has so many ways of stunning on its attacks. And if you really want to stun everybody with +1 stun 1 on every attack, you just run Toga 3.
Yeah.
Snack Time's other symbols have some decent options to pivot to if they want to place or discard excess cards. For example, Set the Record Straight, raiding the villain hideout, and Prone to Dry Eyes. So Prone to Dry Eyes is +1 damage on every attack. Set the Record Straight is discard 1 card, this attack gets -2 damage. Completely the opposite of what you're going for. That's not an aggro strategy at all. That's just defense.
Yeah, it's completely different.
The fact that they're marketing this as a replacement for Snack Time is ridiculous. And raiding the villain hideout is discard 1 card, your good attack gets +2 damage. Which, you know, that's a pretty decent effect. If you get your damage from this and your speed from elsewhere, it can essentially make up for Snack Time. The problem is, this is a 3 diff rather than a 1 diff, and it only works with good.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that made Snack Time butchered was that it was a 1 diff.
Yeah, because otherwise, obviously, you just run One with Nature over it. So again, this doesn't make up for it on Death. This doesn't make up for it on any symbol other than All, which I don't think was playing it as much as the other 2 symbols anyway. I guess we do have the ability to use Setting the Record Straight to -2 damage our own attacks, just to put cards in the discard pile if we need that. But Set the Record Straight is so rough for that. No, none of these are okay as replacements. As always, we will continue monitoring the metagame after this change. We are committed to trying to ensure the standard meta is a healthy and diverse experience. The card pool shake-up since the release of Dark Tournament is significant, and we love seeing all the new ways our players are trying to capitalize. 3 cards will receive an errata this month. The following will go into effect on April the 8th. So by the time you see this video, they'll all already be in effect, but I have played a little bit without them, and let's just say it's caused some problems. So first up we have Ice Sword Execution. Ice Sword Execution used to say, name one foundation, commit all copies of that foundation. As worded, this strictly means commit all your copies of that foundation. Work as intended, it needs to say commit all copies of that foundation in all stages, which is how it's changed now. Then we have Storm of Arrows, which said you may spend ranged weapon attacks, so specifically attacks with both keywords, from your card pool as though they were momentum to pay for this attack's echo ability. It now says you may clear one other ranged weapon attack from your card pool as though you were spending momentum to pay for this attack's echo ability.
Or you could echo, get rid of this, and it'll be kind of like Crow and Frog takedown.
Yeah, it was basically a 5 difficulty Crow and Frog takedown, and that's kind of crazy, because if this had good, this would be the return of All Might True Form. But A, it doesn't have good, and B, it doesn't actually work that way. At least not after the new errata. But actually, it never worked that way, because something else here has changed that you might not have noticed, which is now, instead of spending ranged weapon attacks from your card pool, you clear them. So, spend and clear a new terminology. I'll probably go over that in a small side video, just to clarify how that all works. But the important part here is you spend cards from your momentum, you clear cards from your card pool, which means when this asked you to spend a card from your card pool, that was an impossible instruction.
Oh, wow.
So this card actually did not function as written. Nobody realized it didn't function until this errata came out, but when this errata came out was 6 days before it went into effect. So there was actually a local qualifier in that time where somebody turned up running this card and were told by the opponent, yeah, that doesn't actually function. They then proceeded to say, but we'll let you play it as intended for this. But it also came out later that if they were running the crazy combo that this card was being run in, they would have just said, no, you can't do that, and left it at that. And the thing is, they would have been well within their rights to do so, because as written, the card does not function.
Yeah, which would have just caused an argument and a judge call that's probably going to leave with someone very upset.
So that part of the errata really needed to go into effect immediately, I think, because having that week where you know that the card doesn't work as it previously was written, but also don't have the errata to make it work, it's just extremely janky.
Yeah, and especially this is a very popular release as well that this is part of.
Yeah, this is the most popular release of the year. Way more than any of the actual sets. People were extremely excited for Critical Role. So yeah, this is kind of crazy. This was a highly popular release. A lot of people had this card, and then it turns out this card wasn't actually playable as written. And for a week, that was brought to everyone's attention as a rule, yet not fixed. Fortunately, by the time you're seeing this video, that week is up, that rule is fixed, everything works, except it now can't discard itself, which is probably for the best.
Yeah, Crow and Frog takedown was banned for a very good reason.
Yeah. And I mean, Crow and Frog takedown was banned for its use in one of the 2 characters that could use it to ready something. But actually, it was busted at every aggro deck of the format.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's 2 of the things that have changed. The third one is that it now only lets you discard 1 card to the Echo effect. But I don't know how you'd manage to discard 2 cards to the Echo effect anyway, because Echo only ever asks for 1. So after that, we finally have Knott's Flask. Knott's Flask was just badly written. It says, after you build this asset, add 3 booze counters to it. If there are no booze counters on this card, your attacks get -2 speed. Which sounds fairly straightforward, like it works. Problem here is this card does not refer back to this asset. This asset could be argued to be this card once it's in your stage, but the fact that they're separate sentences and this says this card means that it refers to this card in all zones. So if it's in your discard pile, for example, and there are no counters on it because counters can't be on cards in your discard pile, all your attacks get -2 speed.
It's the Eri situation.
Yeah, it's the same Eri situation again, just with a slightly more convoluted wording that made it harder to spot.
And this time it makes the card worse, not better.
Well, except in a very specific matchup, because I did try this card out against your Jiro deck, and actually getting to 0 counters so that all my attacks had exactly 3 speed rather than 5 was really helpful, because it meant you couldn't use your ability to ready your stuff.
Yeah.
So the new one is, if there are no booze counters on this card while it is in your stage, your attacks get -2 speed. They just added while it's in your stage. That's all it needed. It just provides scope to the effect so that it doesn't hit things that it wasn't supposed to. That's all that's changed for the ban and errata list today, but there is one other banned card I kind of want to go over. A slightly older one that's coming back again in a sense. So this here is Quan Chi. His original 1-dot form says enhance, remove 1 character card from your discard pile. For the rest of this enhanced step, your starting character gains all enhanced abilities printed on the removed card. He also has a second ability, which was also busted, but we don't need to worry about that. They reprinted him as an errated version, the Quan Chi 2-dot, which has basically the same effect, except now it's twice per turn, so he can't just do it on every attack and gain all the abilities and stack them all up, but it still means he gets to do 2 once per turns or once per games every turn. He could actually remove the same character multiple times and get up to 4 instances of the same once per game across 2 turns, which is kind of too good.
Yeah, you play a character just to get that once per game.
My personal favorite was using him to discard my hand to a punch with Deku, then using passing the torch to draw 2 cards back up, then doing it again, because back in the standard of the time, you could just run Deku off symbol and play the entire thing, have a 7-hand-sized Deku on death, essentially, who could get +10 damage twice. The opponent blocks one of them, and he's like, here's another one, kills you.
Oh, wow.
That was not actually that good of a deck, but it was still a very clear example of how this character could exploit all sorts of things. He was not okay.
For sure.
So yeah, that's Quan Chi. But one of the brand new revealed characters for the Girl Power set, the 7th My Hero set, to be legal in both Spotlight and the standard format when it comes out, is Toga 4. And the problem with her is she has once per turn remove a card from your discard pile, choose 1 none once per game enhance ability on the removed card. This card gains that ability until the end of the turn. So okay, she can't have a once per game, but she can have every single once per turn in her deck and pick up any one of them as a toolbox.
That seems very strong.
That already seems very strong. In standard, however, on All and Evil, she also gets access to a card named Rando's Spirit Gun, which combos on an attack or a face down, I believe it is, but it combos to say specifically, you may play once per turn abilities on your character a second time this turn. So the normal interaction there is you go once per turn, remove a character card in your discard pile, and choose an enhance on it, gain that. You choose a once per turn, you use that once per turn, then you use Rando's Spirit Gun's effect. Now you've played 2 once per turns that you can play again. You do have to wait until your second attack to do that, but I mean, your second attack could be during Rando's Spirit Gun if you did all the removal and stuff on the first attack. So now you can do whatever ability you picked up again, and you can do Toga's ability again to pick up another ability, which you can then use. And because if you pick up a once per turn, that Rando effect is still floating, so on your third attack, you can use that second once per turn that you picked up again as well. So you've just, from one specific attack, one non-specific attack, and Toga's ability itself, got access to 2 instances of 2 separate once per turn abilities in one turn.
Yeah, this seems like it's going to be a problem.
And that's the normal use of it. Bear in mind, you can also run extra copies of Toga in your deck, so you can remove her, gain her once per turn, have a second instance of it, use it, gain another instance of it, use it, gain another instance of it, then use it to pick up an ability, then use Rando's Spirit Gun. You can now pick up 4 more abilities, each of which you can use twice.
Jesus. I feel like that is going to either be errated or called to get an errata.
Oh, people are already calling for it to get an errata or for her to get banned. Because yeah, there is very clearly a problem, and people are really hoping that it doesn't result in a ban of Rando's Spirit Gun. They could, people are saying, just change Rando's Spirit Gun to say printed ability, so you can't use the abilities she gains again. But even that would let her pick up 2 once per turn abilities in a turn and use both of them, which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
So do keep an eye out for Toga 4 being a massive problem. She's going to be a lot of fun, but I don't think she's going to be fair. And that's the issue. This character copying is almost never fair. The fairest version of it I've seen is Monomer, and even that, I'm fairly sure Monomer is one of the reasons that Cutest isn't playing anymore. Because playing Midnight into Monomer means everything you do is just undone, and then also Monomer gets to do a tiny bit more to it because he can add traits to everything. And so he just plays your own character better and cancels everything you do.
Oh wow.
as long as he can hit you once on symbols that had access to things like Electric Jolt or Muscle Rush. And he was the fair one. These abilities, they kind of have to go, you know, which is a shame.
Yeah, it is such a fun concept. When I first saw Togo, I was like, this is really interesting because it turns a type of card that unless you're someone like twice, you never run extra characters in your deck. And this seems like a really neat way to go about that.
Yeah, I think if she does have to be errated and not banned, my answer would be to only let her remove cards that are not either already in her remove from game pile or in her stage. That way she can't remove herself and she can't remove multiple instances of the same character.
Yeah, that seems fair because then you run characters kind of like a toolbox.
Yeah, and running them like a toolbox is fine. It's the ability to get more uses than you're supposed to out of something that's an issue.
Yeah,
That might
it'll
fix
make
her.
yeah, it'll make her. Yeah, you're gonna have a really tough and slightly annoying game against her, but there's still gonna be a back and forth.
Yeah, although to be fair, if she removes Midnight, she still gets to do everything Midnight does better than Midnight because she keeps that enhanced for the entire turn.
Yeah,
So she would still very much be the same problem as Monoma in certain matchups. But then Monoma's
but
fair. Monoma's just annoyingly dominant in some cases.
yeah, I faced Monoma before, and he was just annoying.
He's extremely matchup dependent, and he needs to be built to interact with everything he might possibly steal, which is why he's just A, really difficult to build, so doesn't show up much, and B, really inconsistent, so doesn't show up much. So I don't think Monoma's actually a problem, but there are problems with Monoma that are worth considering in the context of Toga, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree.
And the final thing I want to mention is going back to the bans in Errata that we've seen this month, every single one of these is referred to as being part of the standard ban and errata list. There is no reference to this affecting My Hero Academia Spotlight, so we do not actually know for sure whether snack time is still legal in My Hero Academia Spotlight, because they have not said, but until they say otherwise, I think it's safe to assume that it is. We do finally have a clarification on clear and spend, but I'm just going to go over that in a separate side video, save a little bit of space in this one, and make it a bit more easily accessible information. That's all for now. I'm catch you again in the next video. See you, everyone.
See ya.